welcome to the show. And I want to introduce my new friends, Beth Eck, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Terri Nordone, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We are here to encourage women, and we are here to talk about the not so easy topic of abortion recovery. And you have stories that you can share to help women out there not only understand what happened to you, but what waits for them in the way of incredible healing. Before we get to the good news, tell me a little bit about, Beth, just begin, why don't you, of where your story begins with the time in your life that this happened and became the issue.
In college.
Mm-hmm. Statistically, that's pretty much the norm. Huh?
Mm-hmm. I think I was a junior. Some of the time frame is a little vague, but I think I was a junior, either sophomore or junior year.
Yeah. And this was from a boyfriend or somebody you were in a relationship with.
I was in a sorority and involved with a fraternity, and there were several of my sisters that were going through the same thing and making choices to have an abortion. It wasn't talked about throughout the sorority, but it was clear that those things were happening.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. And how about your boyfriend at the time? What did he have to say about it?
That once it was clear that the pregnancy test was positive, that it was just what it had to be. Not a question of, let's keep this child, let's stay together, have an abortion.
Really?
Not even a question.
Wow.
Just do it. And it was done.
Had you, at that point, either one of you told parents or family members?
I told my mother, and I didn't tell anyone else.
Yeah.
And maybe, I think maybe 2 sorority sisters I had told that had been there in support for me.
Yeah.
And a couple of other girls that had just had their abortions.
Wow.
So it was fresh.
And they made it sound like it would be...
No big deal.
No big deal.
No big deal. And the clinic on the campus said over and over again, don't worry about it. This is tissue. This is not anything that's going to feel anything. And you have your whole life ahead of you, and you're doing the right thing. And I had aspirations to be a full-time singer and had dreams to be an opera singer, and immediately I thought of myself and not about life, and it would seem more important to take care of myself over a child.
Yeah.
And how I would hide my sin and how I would keep that a secret. I was involved with Campus Crusade and singing on campus, and multiple mentors and professors and teachers and friends, and it wouldn't seem to be the right fit for someone like me to be making such a choice.
So it was kind of pretty much everybody had the same message, abortion's the answer.
Abortion's the answer.
And then you can move on.
Yes, it seemed like that.
Yeah, okay. Terri, how about you?
Well, I was very young in high school, and I had a boyfriend who pressured, and I finally gave in, and gave in to it. Yeah. Knew it was wrong, but I appreciated the attention, and so I gave in to the pressure, and sooner or later I found myself pregnant. And this was back in 1972, or 71 actually.
Wow.
And so, I was terrified. I was just a kid, didn't know what to do. Went to my older sister and told her. She took me to a clinic and had a pregnancy test. They didn't come in little boxes then.
Have the home ones back.
No.
Okay, that's right.
And so had the pregnancy test, and sure enough, I was pregnant. And then took me to tell my dad, which was so terrifying, but had to tell my dad. And then eventually, a few days later, told my mom. And my parents were divorced, so it was not a real happy home life, alcoholism, and so, I was seeking love and acceptance and attention.
Yeah.
But this is not the kind of attention I wanted.
Yeah.
But I was pregnant, and my dad arranged everything. And one beautiful sunny day picked me up in the morning and took me to the hospital here in Salem. And they didn't have clinics like they do now, but took me to the hospital. And I just remember walking in that place. Seems like I was the only one there. I don't remember seeing other people. I was put in a private room, and my dad waited for me, and eventually they came in and wheeled me in. I don't remember anything about, the details of the abortion itself. I woke up in the recovery room, and I remember just struggling and whimpering and crying and kind of thrashing around, and a nurse came over and put her hand on my arm, as I was laying there, and said, it's over, you're going to be okay soon. Well, no, I was not going to be okay soon. And, my dad took me home, and the only thing that was said was, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm okay," and took me home. And then you go on the next day like nothing happened.
Yes.
And, so no, I was not okay.
So how much is denial a part of what happens to you as you go through time afterwards? Is it telling yourself and others, "I'm okay, I'm okay"? Is that true? Or what? Tell me.
I think so.
What kind of physical and emotional feelings started happening to you? Just dive in.
Repeated surgeries.
Oh, physical.
Very physical. Appendix rupturing and
Oh my gosh.
shoulder surgeries times 4. And I could just feel the inside of my body tortured and not showing it on the outside, but it was eating me on the inside out. A stomach repair, a Nissen fundoplication, 3 jaw surgeries, and just multiple things. Thyroidectomy. My body wasn't holding up to keeping the story in the vault.
Yes.
And not telling anybody.
So it was the big secret.
It was a big secret, not my husband, not my children, nobody. Nobody.
The
except
person
my mother.
you later, it wasn't the boyfriend that you had the abortion with that you married?
No.
Okay.
I did not.
So you went on to marry and it wasn't brought up?
Never brought it up.
Oh my heavens.
And the only reason I brought it up is because on my way home to our farm in Staten, my 2 girls, Jackie and Kristen, were talking about abortion, and it was kind of a conversation you can't imagine is happening with your own children, and they don't know what you've done, and they're thinking about abortion is that it really isn't that big of a deal, and I think women should have their own right to do that sort of thing. I don't know why people make such a fuss about it.
And they were what age?
Well, this was just 3 years ago, so they were at the time 13 and 12, 11 and a half.
Yeah.
So I stopped the car before I got to the farmhouse, and I told them my story. And I said, "This is my story, and it's the truth." And I said, "It is the biggest deal that a woman will ever do if they choose to have an abortion. It will change their life. No matter who tells them it's going to be different or it's not that big of a deal, it will change their life. And everything is not going to be what you think it's going to be.
And not in a good way.
And not in a good way." And my girls cried, and they cried, and I cried, and we drove back to the farmhouse. And I got my husband, and I took him into a back room, and I sat him down, and I had to tell him my story. And he said he wasn't surprised. He knew I had a burden. He just didn't know what it was. But he knew that at some point something would have to give.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Because it showed up in so many different ways, with the physical trauma, depression, self-loathing, and not feeling good enough in life, never measuring up, so always working, pushing harder to hide the secret.
Yeah. Oh, boy. What does that sound familiar to you?
Well, it does in some ways.
Yeah.
When Beth said, her life changed, That's so true. I walked in that clinic, one girl, and walked out a totally different girl, never to return. At age 15, that person was gone, and immediately started pushing people away, started closing myself up from people and not letting them in, because that's the secret. You know, I didn't want them to find out
It was
what I had
buried for
done.
you,
I
too.
started burying it and spent, you know, the rest of my life up until a few years ago locking that away and hiding it from everyone and even myself. And, you know, trying to hide it from myself, but yet you can't. You know, it's there every day and at the forefront.
Did you have emotional symptoms,
Oh,
physical
certainly.
symptoms, nightmares?
Absolutely,
Any
absolutely.
Any
I
of
had
those?
nightmares for years and years until I accepted the Lord, and He cured me of that. I had depression, anxiety, panic, eating disorder, you know, compulsive eating, many symptoms that get really convoluted, because when you lock this away, you don't realize that those things can be attributed to the abortion.
Well, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you. Had either one of you ever been told about any of the side effects that could happen if you had chosen abortion, or anything that was expected for physically, emotionally, any trauma?
Never.
Never talked
never.
about by any physician, any counselor,
No.
anybody?
No.
And do you think that it was something that your family members certainly weren't aware of either?
No.
Absolutely
Okay.
No.
not.
That's good to tell, because I think this is shining a light where it needs to be talked about and illuminated. And I thank you so much for going down that dark road so people can understand what to avoid. Now we're going to talk about, in our next segment, the good news.
Good.
and where you found hope and healing, and invite others to join as well. And we'll be right back.
50 million babies aborted since 1973. That is the estimated number in the years following the Supreme Court of the United States decision to legalize abortion. The ramifications of Roe v. Wade are many. Abortion is a lingering, painful experience for both women and men. It even has a name: post-abortion syndrome. The symptoms include depression, drug and alcohol abuse, grief, attempted suicide, anger, and guilt. Save One is a ministry focused on helping those who are suffering in silence after an abortion. Our passion is to help them reclaim and restore their peace of mind and self-worth. Save One offers help through group study, one-on-one help, or answering questions and giving encouragement through self-study. You will learn how to overcome depression, anger, denial, and guilt while being provided hope for a new beginning. You will experience how far God's grace truly extends. Go to the Save One website, saveone.org.
Hi, well, I'm back with Beth and Terri, who have so generously shared your story, so in the hopes that it will help somebody else. And, you know, I'm so happy to talk about Save One, the wonderful ministry that you've been involved in. But Beth, you were telling me too, there was another aspect of the day of your abortion that I think is so significant. And if you don't mind sharing about what you were talking about, where something was a real trigger, an eye-opener on that day.
Yes, I'd accepted the Lord when I was 14, so I'd felt like I'd had the Lord in my life for a very long time up until this time. When we were on our way, my mother and I, on the way to the clinic, which was out of town, we got in a car accident. And it held us behind, and it was frightening, and exchanging phone numbers, and my mom said, we need to go back. We can't do this. And I knew we needed to go back, but I was determined to finish what I started out. Once we got to the clinic, there were people with big signs, intimidating people, and they had their Bibles, and they were screaming and pulling on my clothing. And stopping me from wanting to go across the street to get into the clinic, all the way to pulling the door open. And I wasn't informed that that's what it would be like to get there. And then I remember just the cold feeling in the clinic, like you were going to get your hair done, just as a matter of fact sort of thing. Take your name, pay your bill, $200 in those days, and then you go back in to the clinic room with the physician, and it's, well, are you ready? And then it starts with an injection, and it's painful, and it's the most painful experience I've ever had.
I think that's important that you
Yes.
say that, because girls are told it's nothing.
It's very painful.
That's not the truth.
No, it's not the truth at all. It took my breath away, and I felt like fainting. It was so painful.
Well,
It was awful. And the noise, I can remember the noise
yes.
of the machine when it was taking my baby.
does it trigger that memory when you hear the vacuum cleaner?
Yes, I can
now?
still hear it, and I can still see the physician's face. I can still see his face. And then they want you to stay and respond to questions afterwards about how you felt about it. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't stop crying by then. My mother was crying, and we were both crying, and I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. I knew I had. And there was just enough time to get cleaned up and put things on to get out of there and walk out very carefully and quietly, and we never said a word on the way back.
Never spoke about it again.
Never spoke about it again.
Wow.
No, for certain. Until 2
Yeah.
years ago when I encountered Save One and met up with Terri.
And talk about how you ran into that.
Well, that was neat.
Yeah.
There was a cardboard testimony at our church, and one of our friends had her testimony that she'd had an abortion and that on the flip side she was healed with God's love. And I was singing in the worship team while we were watching our friends from our church go through the cardboard testimony. And I knew right there, I felt like fainting that moment, because I knew it was time for me to take Save One and find healing in this and forgive myself,
Yes.
so that I could have a life that I had missed out on all this time. And it was that very day. I got on the phone and I said I was ready. And it was a women's retreat that I met Terri.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready to do that. So it was 2 years, Terri, waiting
Yeah.
to make the decision to take the Save One. But it was the cardboard testimony that truly said
You
it.
said
'cause
that's
was,
it.
Yeah, because it was one of our gals on our worship team.
Oh.
And I thought, wow.
That just
wow.
reached out at the right time.
It did.
Timing is everything.
Timing
isn't it?
is everything.
Is that what, Terri? You facilitate these groups.
Yeah, you know,
you are the leader.
I had my abortion at age 15, and then, like I said, suppressed that. And really what that boils down to is repressed grief.
Yes.
And experienced so many of the post-abortion symptoms, you know, all my life. And I didn't know the Lord. I didn't know God. I actually was agnostic for many, many years. I thought, how could this God that people talk about even want me, want to know me? And so I denied him for many, many years. And amazingly, through a funeral service my husband and I attended at Morning Star Church in Salem, I came to know God at age 42. And so it was at that time that I learned of forgiveness, that he forgave even me for what I had done.
So
And the
important to the whole
freedom.
picture.
Yes,
It's very important to the freedom, isn't
Yes,
it?
and the weight that was lifted.
Oh.
Well, within about a year, I knew that he was going to use me to help other women. But at that time, I couldn't even say the word abortion. I was journaling everything that was happening to me in this new life with God. I would leave a blank where the word abortion would be, because it was so deeply offensive. I mean, such deep sickness of soul because of what I'd done. And so, but I knew he was going to use me to help other women feel this freedom. And so I began to look for different resources. I had no idea there were healing ministries available. I had no
Nobody
idea.
told you it'd be anything to heal from, did they, when they
no.
wanted you in that
Absolutely
clinic?
not.
Yeah.
And so I found the Save One book, and I finally, at about age 46, 48, I got this book out, and I started to go through it and realized it was the exact journey that the Lord had been leading me on in healing. And so I knew it was the right curriculum to offer.
And it's something that is, how often do you meet?
Well, it's an
when you
11-week study,
Mm-hmm.
and we offer 3 a year. So
that's
we
wonderful.
just started one last Tuesday. It's not too late to start.
I love
and
it.
join.
And everybody's welcome.
Everybody's welcome. Yes, it's open to the community.
Any faith,
any
tradition,
yeah.
any.
Yes.
So
Yes,
just come.
absolutely. Just come for healing.
Come for healing.
Yeah.
And you would like to see somebody that would feel called to start
Yes.
a group in Portland.
Save One is an international organization started by Sheila Harper, currently based in Little Rock, Arkansas. There's over 125 chapters in the United States, and then there's
Wow.
international chapters. So
That's so wonderful.
it's grown, and it's become such an incredible healing journey for women. But the Salem chapter is the only one in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
And so, yes, we need more.
Yeah.
We need one for men.
A lot of
because
hurting
this
women
healing,
and
men
men.
are
Yes.
hurting too.
That's so important to acknowledge.
So we
Many
do
times
need to
they're the
see
ones
more.
that are the ones putting pressure on.
Yeah.
And they have to heal from that.
Yeah.
We've had men on the show who have spoken about that.
Yes.
That
And I have to just tell you one little step of healing that occurred in my own life, even through leading. I just started my 14th class of Save One last Tuesday, but a couple years ago, it was just really heavy on my heart that I needed to talk to my mom, because remember, my parents were involved in this
Yes.
when I was just a kid, and it had never been mentioned again in the family.
you never spoke of it?
Never spoke about it again, not one word.
Oh.
And so it was really heavy on my heart to talk to my mom. So I called her over, and we sat down. And I said, Mom, because almost every Tuesday after my class, I stop at her house and I visit with her.
Oh, boy.
And she knows I'm coming from my class.
Yeah.
But she didn't know what the class was.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
I sat her down and I said, Mom, and I had my book on the table. I said, every week I stop by after my class. Have I ever told you what my class is? And she said, no. And I said, well, Mom, it's a class that I teach women how they can be healed after an abortion, because it's such a traumatic experience. And she just sat back in her chair and she goes, oh, I have been so guilty all these years that I didn't let you have that child, that I wasn't a better mom and home more, that I made you do that. And because I would have a child now. See, I never got to have children.
That was
and
your
I
only
aborted my
pregnancy.
only child. And so my mom has felt guilt all these years. And I was able to tell Mom right then and there, Mom, I need to ask your forgiveness. I'm the one that put you in that position, and God forgives. God forgives you.
So parents hurt.
Parents
Friends hurt.
Yes.
Everybody that's involved in the abortion decision can
Yes. Yeah.
be in need of healing.
Oh, yes.
You
It's
don't.
widespread.
Nobody talks about this.
No.
Do you
And
find-
it should be spoken about more, because it's
Yes.
not just the woman and the lady who had the abortion.
Oh.
It's a trickle down.
Well, I
Absolutely.
so hope people go to the website and learn more about Save One. It's just a wonderful, wonderful message of hope and healing, and I wish we
It
had
is.
hours more to talk. Just really briefly, we're out of time, but I know this healing has enabled you to glow
Yes.
in doing things that are so life-giving. And briefly, I want you to mention you sing with a group. Where can we hear you sing?
Capella Romana.
Capella
Yeah,
Romana, and
it's-
that's a website too.
Yes, it
people
is,
can
uh-huh.
go to.
Byzantine chant,
Oh,
etc.
Well, we hope to have you back to do that, and you are involved in one of my first loves, chocolate.
Yes, I'm a chocolatier.
What is your website?
It's poshganachechocolate.com.
I love it. I
Beautiful
love
chocolates.
that. Isn't it wonderful that you are so happy and free to
Yes.
be the person God put you on this earth to be
Amen.
without the burden of that
She
pain.
has chocolate, and I have singing. And
Yeah,
a worship
I
team
mean,
at Morning Star.
I tell you,
It's
everybody
great.
should go down to Morning Star
Yes.
Church in Salem, and they can
You'll have it
they
all.
can have it all.
You'll be
That's
covered.
right.
That's right.
Oh, I just thank you so much for
Well,
sharing.
thank you for having us
Thank you.
here.
And this has just been a wonderful, wonderful ministry you have, and thank you. And I hope we can get you back again with chocolate and singing. Right?
We can do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.